Welcome back. This is Gmax 1.2 for the beginning modeler, video number 32. We are in the process of building and animating gear parts. This is the second part of this series, mini-series. So we'll continue where we left off. The last time we, zoom in here, we built, we identified all the parts of the gear we wanted to build. We built the upper strut for the gear. We built the oleo suspension part of the gear, and we built the axle, and we linked each to its parent above it. And in this video I'm going to show you how to build the wheel and the tire and shape it to kind of look like this one. I like a good looking tire and wheel, because it's kind of like having a awesome looking car and having crappy wheels on it. So I like good looking gear and wheels on my aircraft. So I put a little extra polish in it, make them stand out, and it kind of makes it a whole new ball game. So what I just went through before this video and preparing for the video was taking another shot at building a wheel, kind of like the other one, and going through the steps of building the tire roundness that I wanted, the width that I wanted, building the outside wheel, and then changing the inside to make it more like a brake mechanism on this side, and then centered it on the axle. So with that in mind, I wanted to show you basically what I did to build that, and then to save a little time, I restarted building the wheel here and got it roughly the same shape, and we'll take it from there. But first I want to show you the starting point, and that would be using the Taurus, standard primitive Taurus, and these are kind of interesting to build. The first time I used the keyboard method to build the Taurus, and it took me for freaking ever. Usually I just do it with the mouse, and it's kind of weird the way it works, because you'll see when we start. So I'm kind of centered on this so we can get the right size. When you first click, you just get something like that, and then when you let off and push, well, let's try that again. There we go. When you let off and push, then you I'm not sure why it's restricting my outside diameter, but when you let off and push, you're controlling the inside diameter, and you get kind of the proportion that you want inside to outside, and then right click and that deal is done. Then you can scale it up to kind of be the size that you want, and we'll just do a comparison here. Yeah, it's pretty close. So that kind of puts you in the ballpark and gives you a good start. And it's this one's not very heavy, I don't think. Let's take a look. Well, it is. It's 32 segments, which is as heavy as you can get in Gmax for FS9. It's not as wide as we want, whatever, but it's an excellent starting point. So the next thing I did was, because I want to build a wheel right into the tire here, I just went in, and to save time I went with the green one to the left here, but I just converted this to editable poly, and then went around and selected all of the inside polys, and to save time I already did that. So selected all them out, and then I used the scale or the non-uniform scales tool to widen it out to about to this ring, and then I deleted all those polys. Once I deleted them, just go ahead and scrap this one and get to the other one. Once I deleted them, and it kind of looked like this on both sides, and you can see where I widened the inside of the tire before I deleted out those polys. Then I just went back and used the border feature and capped it, and now we're ready to take the next step. So that's how I got to this point. And just as a matter of personal preference, on this one over here, I went in and carefully selected all the vertices around the second ring here and extruded them out. You can see where they're just out slightly further than this ring, than the second ring here. So first, second, third. So that's what I would do here, just to give the tire a little better appearance. And then did a little reshaping on this outer outside ring, the tread ring. Now, if you're going to use this as a non-tread tire like they typically use on experimental aircraft, because they're on, at least World War II era, they were on grass a lot and just ground, and they used just a non-tread tire, and that's kind of the shape of that tire. But this one, we've got diamond shapes or cross shapes, as I do on the example on the other side. So I wanted to shape it a little different. And even after working with it, it was hard for me to duplicate the shape of this one here. You can see the curvature I've got and what have you, but you just got to play with it. And I've used that tire on a bunch of different aircraft, just resized it and shaped it, and that's the last shape I ended up with. So now that we have this, how do we get to this? So that's where we'll pick up on this, and we're going to go to ignore back facing and select both sides. We're going to do both sides the same, then we'll come back and modify this one. Actually, we can do one at a time. No, it's easier to do both, because when you're using the non-uniform scale tool, it keeps everything in balance, and you can actually do it one side. Let's try it. I haven't done it this way, but what we're going to do here is extrude. What we're going to try to do now is build this wheel out, so it comes out from the tire, up, goes back in, comes to the center hub, out from there, and that's where we finish up. So let's see if we can do that one side at a time, and then we can just build the brake mechanism on the other side. So the first thing I did to do this was extrude it out just a little to give a little appearance of the wheel edge, and then just a smidgen more because I want to pull it down to create the wheel, the outside rim of the wheel, if you will. And then we're just going to extrude inward to give it some depth, as you see here. And then we're going to extrude outward just a smidgen. It really doesn't matter, but we're just going to pull that down to the center hub, to somewhere in here. And then we're going to extrude out for the hub, and we're going to bring it down a little. And that's how I did that. Of course, it's a little different, but make it look any way you want. You don't want it out further than the wheel or the tire, actually, and it's not, so it's okay right there. Okay, and then on this side, we wanted to build the brake, and it's kind of a similar deal. There's just less involved. So let's click on this side. We're going to extrude out a little for the edge of the rim. And then we're going to scale down. No, we're not. We've got to extrude a smidgen just to get another set of polys going. Then we're going to scale down to pick up the brake part here. And we'll extrude that out. And there you have it. You've got, that's pretty much it. So the next thing you would do, of course, would be, as we always do, effect pivot only, center to object, line to world. And that's the pivot that has to be used for the animated tire to turn correctly. And then we'll reset scale because we did scale that a bit. Alright, and then it's a matter of finding the center not the x-axis, but the y and the z-axis, 228 and 177, and plugging that in here, 228 and 177. I guess that's what I have. So if we were to then move this over, it should put us right where we want to be. Let's just delete this old one here. And then we'd position that wheel pretty tight up against, pretty tight. We don't want to be into this. Actually, this is a little large, seems like to me, but anyhow, that's fine. We're just demonstrating technique here, not trying to be too accurate. So now we have a wheel, and we need to link it, of course, to the axle. Let's see if we can do that. Link, select. There, you saw the axle highlight, so it picked it up. So we now have a hierarchy of cylinder, 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 and Taurus. You remember what I said in the 2 videos ago about giving things names that actually meant something? This is why. Alright, so we'll call this left tire, I guess. Left underscore tire 01. And we're going to call this C. And this is one of those animated terms, C gear, not C, L, left gear, lower, or oleo, whatever you want to call it. And we'll call this, we don't have to say left or right on this, otherwise we'll be axle 01. We just call axle 01, it's not animated. So, and then we'll call this, there we go with C again, left gear upper. Alright, now when we look at it, we see we've got the tire linked to the axle, which is linked to left gear lower, which is linked to left gear upper. So, that's what we've got so far. So, let's see, let's just select all these and give it a kind of a grayish color. So that's that part. And the next part, actually I did one here I probably shouldn't have done because it's actually too fat, but to show you what I did, see, this is for the gear retracting arm. It pulls it, that retracts or deploys the gear. So let's go to the front view here, and we're going to build a bracket to hang these scissors off of right quick. And all we need is to select this and modify in poly mode. We're just going to select the center poly here, and we're going to extrude that out to about here. And that's what we're going to hang our upper scissor off of. Okay, we'll go down and do something similar with this. Let's see, we're getting front view so I can see which one is the center. Now this one, I'm kind of cheating a little bit, but I don't have anything down here, but that's alright, this will work. We'll extrude that, and then we'll just pull it down, kind of like that, and pull it out, and we can hang that scissor off of that one. And if you want to be anal about it, I guess we can tighten up these 2 vertices right here. You can use that. So there we go. We got scissor hangers, if you will. So I guess we could push this back in there somewhere. We have something to hang that off of. Now, I don't know if we need to take the time to build the scissors right now, but what I'd like to do is get into the animation. Even though these have to be animated, they're kind of a separate deal, and we might do that in the next segment just to keep this from going too long. So, let's go to the left view. Let's talk about animation. When you animate gear, it has to start just like with flaps in the fully retracted as if you're flying mode. So before you can do any kind of animations, you have to get prepared by setting all your pivots. So let's adjust the pivot for this, center to object, line to world, and we go to local pivot. Then what we want to do is move this up to the pivot point. Where do we want this gear to pivot? So we'll set it kind of arbitrarily up in here for now. All of this can be changed later, by the way. Once you do animation, just because you've done animation doesn't mean you can't change it. You can change it one keyframe, one position, or one rotation key at a time, or you can change them all at a time, or you can delete the keys and reanimate it. So it's actually quite flexible. So we're going to rotate this up to kind of be at the same angle, just as an example. We'll assume that's the up position. So we're now going to get ready to animate by setting up our rotation and position keys. Keys are set so that Gmax can record the position, the angle of the pivot at every keyframe where there's a key, and we're going to add a rotation key as the first key at position 0. I mentioned earlier that the upper gear in this retract and deploy gear starts at 0 and ends at 100. So we need to go put a key at 100 just so that Gmax has a place to record its position once it's animated. And once that's done, you come back to the start here and you're ready to animate. So how do we do that? With our keys in place, rotation key and position key. And you notice when you're in those positions, this is highlighted. I'm in a rotation key position. If I go to 100, you see the position key is active. So that's the slots that Gmax is going to record the position. As soon as I click animate, boom, it's recorded the position and the rotation value of this pivot. Whenever you're animating as well, you need to be in local coordinate mode. That means it's using the pivot you set up specifically for this animation, for this part. You notice if I switch back to view, I'm looking at a different angle on that. And the pivot is facing in a different direction. In local coordinate mode, I got the X value pointing to the right, and this is pointing in an upward angle from this from the upper gear, and the Y is pointing forward, just as you would see down here. So that's what we need. Okay, so it's recorded this position at 79.726 degrees and 0, 0 on the others, I guess. And so we move the scalar to 100, and now what we have to do is use the rotate tool to rotate this down to where we want it to be when the gear is fully deployed. So we'll just do that. We'll pull down and keep pulling down until we get, till we get those lines nice and vertical there, and that should be about where we need to be. I don't remember what that other angle read, but this is where we are. We're vertical. So when you let off, that position of the pivot is recorded. So now we can turn off the animation. We're done. So now when you move the scalar, the animation activates for you. You can actually, if you wanted to, go over here to the Animate controls and say, play that for me, and it will do it. And it will run out to the end of the scale and start over. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. So there we are. We're sitting at 100. Let's stop it at 100, if you will. And then that part is animated for now, and it's done. So the next thing we want to do is the suspension part. Now, if we had a good 3 view, let's go back to this section here. The 3 view would show you where this wheel is, or tire, when the gear is hanging, as if you're coming in for a landing and haven't landed yet, so your gear is all the way down, fully extended. And what I do when I have those situations, when I have that data or visual, I take the tape here and I just kind of create a line, say this is my hanging position, and this is where my tire would be when the aircraft is sitting on the ground on the tarmac static. And this is my fully compressed position. That means that's the end of my animation right there. Now, I don't know if these are right, but it kind of gives you a sense of how far do I go when I'm animating my suspension. So if you have guidelines or you have knowledge of how much total animation you got, then you use that to your advantage. So what we're going to do now is animate the lower gear, and so we can keep those lines in view here. If we can't do it, well, let's see. I suppose we could hide all this stuff now. Actually, we could hide that. Whoops, wrong one. Thank goodness for an undo, huh? Hide unselected. Now we can look at it from the right side and see our lines, and also see how much of this, of what we built for oleo suspension, how much of that we've actually used, and we might want to adjust it. I usually give a more compression in this first deal than I do in the second, and that's the way I set up the contact points. It just gives you a softer suspension, and takes bumps better, it takes hard landings better, and you want a lot of people make the mistake of only giving 3 or 4 inches of animation here, and that's totally wrong. It makes for a very stiff suspension. It makes your tires chirp when you land, and it could make your gear collapse or crash because of all the weight that's coming down hard on the stiff suspension. So anyhow, that's just my personal preference, and that's the way I set up my contact points. I like gear with just a lot of suspension. Just like when you jack your car up on the frame, your tires hang down a lot more than you think they will. That's because there's a lot of this that's used to carry the weight of the aircraft or the car, and usually when it's sitting static, you only have about this much left, and you don't realize that you've got all that other part up in the upper piece here. So anyhow, let's go ahead and set this one up for animation. So we're at 100, and you can do this at 100 or 101. Let's go to 101, and we'll put since we're not rotating, well, we will in this aircraft, but generally in the suspension aspect, 101 to 200, you're not rotating, you just have 2 position keys. So you go 101 to 200, which is where you animate your suspension. Put your keys in place and come back to 101, and then let's start the animation. So boom, I had already centered this pivot, but it doesn't matter where this pivot is as long as it's centered to the object. So we can go ahead and just record that position. We can go to 200, and then we have to move this up, and you just use the select and move tool and move this up as high as you want it to go. Now I want it to go actually about to here. I want to use as much of that suspension as I designed in. So See if we can move this up to there. It gives us a feel. And so that's how much suspension we've got. So clicked off the Animate. It has recorded that position, and now we've got the suspension going for us. And we've got the rotation going. So that's all there is to that little animation piece there. Pretty neat, huh? Okay. Now, in the next video, we will add the 2 torque links, and we'll link them to their appropriate gear part, and then we'll have to coordinate animation of those 2 to get them to kind of stay together, because you got them moving under 2 different parents. So it's an interesting little exercise, but it's actually quite easy to do. So anyhow, we've got the primary gear parts built. Everything's linked together. These parts are now animated, and relatively simply. It's a lot simpler than most people think, actually. There are some gear parts that are extremely challenging. For example, the Grumman mallard I did that has a bunch of different folds and rotates all built into different parts of the gear. That was a challenge. It took me a few hours to do that. But you can see this is not a significant challenge at all. So it should be easy for you to pick up on. So hopefully we've got through some cute little hints there, or techniques for building the tire and animating the parts. So we'll see you back at the next video and try to finish up these torque links. Maybe we'll add the torsion bar, or the retracting bar, and animate it as well. We should have time to do that. All right, guys, thanks for joining, and any comments, put them below, and I'll look back at you at the next video. Have a good day.